On our first video on goal setting, we discussed a statistic that we heard on the radio. That was that 97% of people fail on their New Year's resolutions within the first 3 months of the year. Now, depending on how true that really is or isn't, I think we'd all agree that there's often times where we'll set goals, but then never quite make it to them. And then we looked at how ourselves and with the wonderful agents we get to work with locally and nationally, we noticed so many folks achieving at a high level and looking at what really makes those goals work and hitting those goals. And that is where we end up discussing, hey, we need to have a video on goal discussion and how we break things down. That first video discussed the broad level goal that most folks will end up kind of setting when they look at, say, a new year or the next few months in their sales career. And that is, okay, how much income or revenue do I want to create? And then breaking it down to, for real estate's sake, for example, how many sales or leases does that take to hit that income or revenue goal? And we did that breakdown in that video, and we took it a step further and said, okay, not only number of transactions do I need to make to achieve that goal, what's the volume I need to make to do that? Being sales volume. Do I need to sell 5 million, 10 million, 50 million in real estate to hit my income or revenue goal? So I broke that out in the video and then talked in the end how it's important to take all that and bring it to a monthly level, dividing it by 12, or if you're a little more advanced, adding in some seasonality adjustments. That right there is a good level that a lot of folks will get to when they set their goals. However, we believe that's why 97% of people end up not achieving them, is that they stop at that point. This video is taking it a step further, and we believe this is what has allowed our agents and agents that we've worked with and seen do so well. We believe they do these items. We like to call it our number of actions, or NoA breakdown. So we're going to get into that here now. So what is a NoA? A NoA is essentially a number of actions. We need to take our goal that we created and broke down to a monthly level and now figure out what are the manageable things that we can do. For example, if you broke out and said, hey, I need to do 50 sales or leases to make my goal for the year, that can seem pretty daunting. That's why in the first video, we break it down to monthly. Okay, we went all of a sudden from 50, dividing that out by 12, we need to do a little over 4 per month. That's a little more doable. But you can't stop there. We got to work back and say, okay, hey, if I need to do 4 a month, what does that start to look like? We need to break it down to the lowest number of actions to get to where we can say it's consumable, meaning that we can actually take action on a daily and weekly basis. So looking at our number of actions, how do we get there? The number of action sequence helps us get to that point. So we look at the formula for that. That's really getting down where we have a monthly goal, and then a number of actions to equal that goal. And then there's a number of actions to equal that miniature number of action goal, and same, so on and so forth. Usually you're going to see 3 to 4 number of actions to get to that monthly goal that we figured out from the first video. So I break this down as an example. And one other thing we always got to make sure, the whole purpose of this is to get down to where we can get to where it's manageable, consumable, we like to say, bite-sized chunks essentially. Things that you can do on a daily, weekly basis. So how do we achieve our monthly goal? We create a number of actions that we have to achieve to get there. Then we find out what are the number of actions that we achieve to get to that number of action, and so on and so forth. And we want to get it down to a level that you can do on a daily basis. For example, let's say we set the goal of getting 2 sales per month. 2 sales per month sounds pretty good. You're like, oh, that's doable. But then as a month goes on, you're like, well, how do I get there? We got to break it down to actionable steps. So if you say, hey, I want 2 closes per month, that might mean for you, you need to know your numbers of what it takes to get to 2. That could mean you need 4 agreements signed. That could be buyer agreements or listing agreements. That's how you figure out those numbers. It's just from your experience and trial and error. If you want a starting point, would recommend that it's roughly about a 50% point. It's going to be ideally a little higher for your listings and a little lower for your buyers if you're in a seller's market. If you're in a buyer's market, it might be a little better for your buyer's agreements and lower for your listing. Pros at this, we'll start breaking it out by so many different details. But at a basic level, let's say you know you need 4 agreements to get to 2 closes. Okay, I need to get me 4 agreements in a month. How do I get that? Well, I better have 6 consults. Because I know that if I get 6 consults, I'm going to pin down at least 2/3 of those, and I'm going to get me my 4 agreements. So what does it take to get me 6 consults? And when I say consult, I mean consultations. That's having a buyer consultation or going on a listing presentation, for example, or doing a lease discussion on what their terms could be. How do I get there? This is where we have the next set of NoAs that could go another 1 or even 2 levels. So it's What are the number of calls I need to make to pin down those consults? What is the number of posts, if you're a big social media like related person, to get those consults? What is the number of mailers that you have to know to send out in marketing's sake to get to the level of consults you need? What are the number of events that you need to get to? Now, we'll have another discussion still on how different actions are passive versus active, and that can make a difference in how consistent you are with your consults. I'll always argue that phone calls and events, for example, things where you're physically at it, you are front to front. We like to say hand-to-hand combat with clients. You're doing the handshakes and getting them reeled in. Those are some of your most direct things that you have control over, and you can then pull in consults. A good phone script and making your calls to targeted people, you can hone in really well knowing, okay, I need to make 100 calls, and I'm going to pin down 6 consults, whatever that is. Posts can be a little bit different, but if you have a very strong social media following or marketing engine for that kind of deal, for emails, for example, and you can know, hey, I'm going to blast out 1,000 emails, and I know I'm going to get 6 replies or whatnot. You can start feeling those numbers out, but you got to start giving a gauge of what do I need to do? Because these are the actionable steps that you can put in at a daily and weekly basis. So now all of a sudden you can track everything to where you know, what do I got to do daily to make this happen? Now all of a sudden we just took that goal that I want to make $200,000 this year, whatever it is. And we said, I want to make $200,000 a year. How do I do that? I need to make 25 calls per day, do so many posts. I need to host 1 webinar a week. You break it down, and this is how you do it. You figure out what are the NoAs, the number of actions that I need to do to achieve the next step up. And you can't just skip from, oh, I do 100 phone calls, all of a sudden I have 2 closings. It's important to work backwards so now you can adequately begin to track each of those metrics. So this is the list for NoAs. This is what takes folks from the level of not quite knowing where to go and achieve a goal to knowing where to go and achieve a goal. We see folks use these very basic principles and they're doing fantastic sales volume. You can even take this and extrapolate and get more detailed, but at the most basic level, we see folks succeed greatly just by breaking things out by their NoAs and knowing the goals they want to hit. So hopefully this makes sure that we put you in that top 3% and not the 97% who don't achieve that next year's goal. Thanks for watching. Talk soon.